Hello and good evening, everyone. I've gone live. Is anyone there? We have one viewer. Say hello. We'll just see if we can wait for anyone else to join. And today we're going to be talking about nutrition and marathon fueling. Hi, Vicky. Thanks for joining us. Hope you're well today. I'll wait another 30 seconds or so and then we'll get started. See if anyone likes to join us. So Vicky, let me know if you've got any specific questions that you'd like to know about nutrition and fueling in regards to your training. Oh, we've got a few more. Hi, Kate. Hi, Julie. Brilliant. We've got a few more that have joined, so we'll get started. So, hi everyone. My name is Katie, also known as CleanCoachKatie. Oh, hi Laura. Thanks for joining us. And my journey is a bit of a funny one. Now, I went to university and I studied sports science, and I actually played netball before in the past. I finished university, I graduated, and then came home and found that all of my friends were doing other things with their lives and weren't interested in doing much in the evenings. So I then sort of found and took up running as a passion, and it all went from there. So I started off, I could only really run 5k. That's all I did. I did a few of the Race for Lives each year, and just fundraised and just was enjoying running. And then after that, I wanted to challenge myself further, so I signed up for a half marathon. And in the process of that, I then decided to do my own research in terms of training, and nutrition was quite a big thing for me. And I found quite quickly that fueling correctly also helps my performance. After that, I fell into the corporate world and was still training alongside my own job. But last year I decided to change my career path, and I'm now a personal trainer and a running coach. And I try to help people not only better their performance, but also their life. And nutrition comes hand in hand with training. So this is where I've got to at the stage today. I've run 2 marathons now. Both have been the London Marathon. So I'm very honoured to have run the London Marathon twice now, and will also be running it next year in 2018. And I've been working with a lot of my clients recently on nutrition, as it's a big part, especially with the longer runs, and when you start to move into sort of half marathons and full marathon distances. So that's what we're going to talk about today. And I think the main thing to talk about with nutrition is quite sort of I'd say there's 3 components here. With one thing is the pre-run fueling. Another big thing, and quite a hot topic, is during running. People want to know how to fuel and how to not sort of hit the wall or feel too tired whilst they're running. That's a big thing because there's a lot of different products out there on the market. And then also post-run fueling and how to sort of fuel effectively just so that you can recover well and get through to the next session. So I know that there was a few questions in regards to sort of those three topics, and we'll cover sort of all three of those today. So pre-run, a lot of people sometimes struggle with things to eat before they run. Now, personally, I like to have porridge before I run. For me, that works really well. It's a slow release carbohydrate and it fills me up and it digests well within my stomach. Now, I have tried various things, and with pre-run, I think that you need to find, this is the whole idea with sort of half marathon and marathon training. You're training for sort of 3, 4, 5, 6 months, and you should use your long runs as practice. Now, it might not work the first time round, but that's why you need to try and find what works best for you. So for me, porridge definitely is the best thing. Other things that people like to try are things like bagels or toast, topped with things like peanut butters and bananas. And I know that some people, if you do struggle with pre-run fueling, especially taking in something like porridge or toast, another good thing to try is something like a smoothie. People don't think that they can digest that, but it actually works quite well. So you can put things like porridge oats, which you get your carbohydrates in. You can add fruit, which again is another form of carbohydrate to get that energy in, and almond milk, ice. You can add spinach to get extra nutrients in as well. So a smoothie is definitely another thing to try pre-run as well. If you don't, that's sort of say for longer runs. Now, if you're doing shorter runs, sometimes you can find that maybe just a piece of fruit, say an apple or a banana, is sufficient to be able to go out and do, say, a half an hour run. You don't always necessarily need quite a big meal to go out and fuel on, especially if you've been fueling well beforehand, say in the week leading up to it, or even the night prior. I find that sometimes just a banana is enough for me to go out for a run first thing in the morning. So if anyone's got any other questions on pre-run fuel, let me know. As well, in terms of the timing of eating, so if you are going for a shorter run and you want something like a piece of fruit, I'd suggest around half an hour to allow that to digest. And if you are eating something a bit more substantial, like the porridge or the toast or the bagel or the smoothie that we've spoken about, then sort of try and allow it an hour to 2 hours to allow that to digest. Again, that's something you need to practice and work on, especially in the lead up to marathon training. So they're the best things that I recommend for pre-run fueling. I, as well, as part of my routine, always have a coffee. I feel that it wakes me up in the morning and it gets me going. And as well, I balance that out with some water just to stay hydrated. But again, just small sips, because you don't want to be stopping off whilst you're running for a toilet stop. That's quite a common thing, and things some people always worry about. Now, so Linda's just asked a good question. I like to run early in the morning and don't like to eat pre-run. How can I fuel for longer runs? So like I just said, making sure that the night prior you get a good meal in, a balance of good carbohydrates and protein the night before, and you can have something quite small if you like, Linda. It depends how long your longer runs are. Now, a piece of fruit or a smoothie would be quite good for that. I would recommend, I know that you certainly don't like to eat, but think about the benefits it's going to have on your performance. Sometimes don't think of it as oh, I don't want to eat, but think about the performance and how you're going to feel on that run. You know, one of the big things that I like to tell my clients is food is fuel. A lot of people think that sometimes food is a reward, but food at the same time is fuel. Like I've just been to the petrol station this evening and filled up my car. My car needs fuel to run, just like our bodies need fuel to run as well. So I think if you don't like to eat too much in the morning, something like a banana or a smoothie can do before. Dried fruit is also good. Something that's easy for you to take in, but not also too heavy on the stomach. So moving on to during running. and fueling. Now that's also a big topic. I know that a lot of people don't like to use gels, and this is where in training, this is where we practice. Now I've recently just been training for a half marathon that I did back in September, and I actually forgot to do my fueling during my long runs, as I was taking them easier than what my time I wanted to go for in the actual half marathon itself, because I was doing speed training during the week. So the week of the half marathon, I actually started to panic because I hadn't been training with any form of fuel. So even in the shorter runs, just to make sure that I could practice, I was taking out gels, different gels and different jelly babies with me to practice on the shorter runs. So don't always think that because you're doing a shorter run you can't take fuel. Remember that these runs are there to practice with and to see how you react, and if you get the energy, and that if it settles well in your stomach. So going back into what you can take now, there are a variety of different gels. Now I would recommend, and I've just done a workshop on this recently and it was a good idea actually, I found it quite a good suggestion, is that maybe ask for, rather than a selection box of chocolates, ask for a selection box of gels, because there are different brands there out on the market and they do have different consistencies, different flavors, different tastes, and they will digest differently. So why don't you ask some family members to go into a sports shop and buy a different variety of gels just so you can try them out on the run. So if that's one option, is just to try different forms of gels. A lot of people recently have also been trying something called shot blocks. Now they're from a brand called Cliff, and they come in little cubes, and people say they're like jelly, and you just pop them in your mouth and they can easily digest. You still get the sugar hit and the carbohydrates that you need, but they're a lot easier to take in than gels. There are also things to try, such as sweets. Now, I have used jelly babies in the past. There are things like wine gums and just other sweets in general people have tried, because you're getting that carbohydrate source, but also it's very fast releasing. So you're getting the sugar that you need quickly on your run. So again, I would recommend trying different things out on the runs and see what you prefer. And another thing that people have started to use is there are new products out there on the market which are more sort of food-based products. So things like flapjacks that have got the carbohydrate source, and dried fruit. Again, it's quick release and it's got the sugar. So someone has recommended to me recently using medjool dates and popping some almond butter in the middle, sort of quite like a treat as well at the same time. So there's a variety of things. Now, unfortunately, I can't tell you what works for you. You just need to go out there and try it yourself. But definitely there are a few options to try. Now, as well, going into a bit more of the science of it, once you start running for more than 60 minutes, they say that you need to take on 30 to 60 grams of carbohydrates per hour. So that's something to look into when you're looking at the backs of gels, looking at sweets, and looking at any dried fruits or anything else that you'd like to take on your runs with you. So over 60 minutes, you're looking at trying to replenish 30 to 60 grams of carbohydrates. Nicola's asked a good question saying, what's the best thing to drink during long runs? Now, some people just like drinking water. Now, there's various options with that. You can use the handheld bottles that you can take with you. Now, some people don't like running with things, which can be quite different. So there's also the backpacks that you can take with you. They have a long tube and they sort of sit just on your shoulder, so that every sort of mile or so, or however you feel like you need a sip of water, you can take a sip and there it is, and it is on your back, so you're not restricted in terms of running. Some people that I know have also sort of trained with the backpack and then come to race day, they've not actually raced with it because they know that on the race there's cups or there's drinks to use. So that's something to think about, that if you are training with a piece of kit, what you're actually going to do on race day itself. Apart from water, you can get things like something called electrolytes. So they come in powder forms and also tablets, and that is to replenish any salts or sugars that you've lost when you sweat. So you can either drink water, you can use products like electrolytes, and there are also the sort of sports branded drinks like Lucozade, Gatorade. There's so many other products out there on the market now. Science and Sport do a few as well. So have a look on what you recommend. I personally just use water. I feel that that's enough for me. But again, a very good thing that people often forget as well is looking at the race that you're doing and what the race provides, as each race, especially the bigger ones, when you get into big half marathons and full marathons, the race organisers will be in partnership or will be sponsored by certain brands. Now, the London Marathon is sponsored by Lucozade, so around the course they will have the Lucozade bottles. So if you know that you're going to, I mean, I don't know this year if that's the case, but if you want to, say, run with Lucozade, you know that on the day you maybe not have to run the race with it because the race organisers are giving it out at certain stations. Again, I went to the Mo Running 10K and went to watch last weekend, and at the end they had Science and Sport electrolytes at the end. So it's always worth having a look at the race, at what you're doing beforehand, and seeing what the race organisers give out. Vicky's asked a very good question, saying towards the end of the run I'm feeling sick from the sugars of the gels and sweets. What savoury options work well, if any? Now, Vicky, I get the very same as well. I find that gels and sweets can be quite sickly after taking too many of them. So savoury options, personally I haven't actually tried, but I have heard the only thing that with savoury things is sometimes I find that it's a lot, you've got to always think of the fuel that you're taking on a run. How are you going to store it? There's the flip belts, or there are bags that you can take, and you've just got to think about how you're going to store it. Now, I have heard some people have used sandwiches before to fuel, but again, it's how you're going to wrap them up enough to try and put them away. Another good thing actually that I have heard of before is pretzels, because they're quite salty and carbohydrate based as well. So pretzels is a good thing to try. I haven't used too many savoury options myself, but that's definitely something that I want to maybe do in December and January, is try different things, and just to see what works for me and what I'd like to continue with moving forward. But definitely try pretzels and just look into options of how you're going to carry that fuel at the same time. Kate's also asked a very good question. Is it best to be replacing the electrolytes during the race or just at the end? Depends how far the distance is, if I'm being honest. I find that I can just use water throughout a race. But if you'd like to, if you feel that it might help you throughout the race as well, then do so. Julie's put, Liza swears by mini baby bells. That's a good option, mini baby bells. As well, it's quite nice actually when you're getting into the longer runs and it's quite mentally tough to be able to use the food to think, right, okay, when I get to a certain milestone, I'll be able to refuel. It's a quite good incentive to keep you going on those runs. If anyone's got any more questions about during run fueling, let me know. And if not, I'll move on to sort of post-run fueling. But unfortunately, it is one of the tough things with nutrition and fueling. It's what works best for the individual. I could say to you, I don't want to say this is what I use, so you should use it too. But it's just worth talking to as many people as possible and seeing what other options there are out there on the market, and just trying a different one each week, or a different option each time that you go for a run. Just trying to think about what other people, because I'm very fortunate. I run with quite a big running club in Milton Keynes, so we do our long runs on Sundays together, and sometimes we can get almost sort of 150, 200 people. So it is quite good to overhear conversations, what other people are using. It's quite a good knowledge base to speak to other people and to see what other people are using. Another option is the Dextro Energy tablets, and they come in sort of a white and orange packet. They sell them in Tesco's, and they're sort of like a powdered tablet, orange flavour. I've tried before, and they're also quite good. It's not as doesn't feel as sweet as something like a Jelly Baby or a gel. Linda's put, I have sachets of sweet potato and sesame and another with turmeric chicken. I'm not sure how I'll get on with them, but I'll give them a try. That's an interesting one. Where did you get the sachets from, Linda? Is that something that you've picked up or something that you've made yourself? Be interesting to know. Okay, so I'm going to move on to post run or post race fueling. Now, a good question came in the group saying that a lot of people, I find sometimes I'm like this as well, that straight after a run I'm not very hungry, and it's quite difficult to eat something straight away after a run. Now, I always recommend straight after a run to make sure that you rehydrate, whether that be with water or that be with electrolytes, making sure that you get the water that you've lost back into your system as soon as you can, because if you don't hydrate well, then it often leads to headaches during the day, later on in the day, and also stomach cramps. Now, I went through, when I was marathon training before, I went through a long period of Sunday runs where I'd feel great straight after the run, probably obviously very tired, but later on in the afternoon, I'd feel awful, and that was down to rehydration. So I'd always recommend, if you're going for a run, if you're going to a meeting point, make sure you've got a bottle of water stashed in your car straight away so that you can rehydrate as much as possible. And again, keeping a water bottle with you after your long runs all the time. So I always make sure that I've got water, I've got a bottle sitting here with me now. I try and rehydrate as much as possible. And going back to if you're not feeling too great straight after, now they say there's a half an hour window that you've got to be able to get food and fuel back into your system, and that's when your muscles are primed to sort of get all of the adaptations that they can. So in a small half an hour window, sometimes you don't have any access to food. So I personally swear by protein shakes. Now, I use a product called My Protein. I've also used PhD, and it's just protein whey shake. I take 1 scoop, I then have it with water, and I have it straight away after a longer run or an intense sort of speed run. The reason and the purpose behind it is that it's muscle recovery, and just to make sure that my muscles are primed and they've got the protein so that they can help to prepare and build and move on to the next session. So if I'm not feeling too hungry, I will always have a protein shake straight after a long run or a session. And then normally around an hour or so later, I'm then absolutely ravenous, and that's when I move on to my meal. Now, when you're having a post-run meal, you should be replacing your carbohydrate stores that you've lost, and also, as I said before, the protein, because that's perfect for muscle recovery. So they say there's a 2-to-1 ratio of carbohydrates to protein that you should be having. Now, Sundays, when you start doing longer runs, especially for marathon training, that's when I start to crave, when I'm in the later miles and the later stages, I'm actually craving bread and eggs. So a really good meal to have post-run is something like scrambled eggs on toast. Adding things like baked beans is also good in there as well, because you're getting the salts back in your body from the baked beans. Again, carbohydrates, it depends what time of day it is as well. So some people have porridge after a run. If you're going out very early in the morning, you can replenish again with another bowl of porridge. And again, say if you're running in the evening, then a good evening meal to have is some form of protein, say chicken or turkey, any form of meat really, or beans or pulses. If you're more sort of vegetarian, you can then add fish in there as well, and having some form of carbohydrate, so rice, pasta, and vegetables as well. Vegetables, a lot of people don't think that vegetables are very high in carbohydrates, but they actually also have a form of carbohydrates as well. So making sure you get your leafy green vegetables in there too, as well, for all your micronutrients. So post-run fueling, 2-to-1 carbohydrate to protein, and just making sure that it's a nice balanced and healthy meal. It's very difficult, especially on Sundays. People want to, your body is craving that sugar. So try to be careful that you don't undo all the good work that you've done by just refueling on all the salts and sugars that you're craving, because you probably will start to crave things like sweets, chocolates and crisps. But if you have a good protein based meal, it should hopefully satisfy your hunger levels, but also stop and keep those sugar cravings at bay. So Linda's replied now about the sachets, a company called Long Haul. That would be good to try out, actually. So has anyone got any questions on post-run fueling? I've covered what I sort of like to have after my long runs, especially on Sundays. Scrambled eggs on toast is definitely a good thing that I like to have. And if I am short on time, then a protein shake is normally quite adequate as well. I know that companies like Science and Sport do a recovery drink, which also has sort of carbohydrate base in there as well, so you're getting the protein and carbohydrate straight into your body. I think you'll find as well when you do races in goodie bags, they have a lot of sort of pretzel based products, things that, and sort of flapjacks. So that's also quite a good thing to have if you want flapjacks straight after a run. Julie, very good question. How do you balance fueling and trying to lose weight, or at least not gain weight? Now, this is a tough one, especially when you come into marathon training or half marathon training, because your intensity levels of training increase. Therefore, in theory, your weight should drop, but then also your hunger levels and will then also increase at the same time. So I think trying to balance fueling and trying to lose weight. Now, my name is CleanCoachKatie, so I try to endorse as much clean eating as possible. Now, I try and get foods from clean sources. Now, don't get me wrong, I am like everyone else. I do like a burger and a brownie from time to time, but I try to eat as much clean products as possible. Now, I don't mean sort of clean where you wash them beforehand, but my theory is eating as less processed as possible. So the less processed the product is, the better it is for us. So I always make sure that I eat lots of fruit, lots of vegetables, good forms of carbohydrates, and protein, as I said earlier, will keep you fuller for longer. So you need to be able to find that fine balance between treating yourself after a run, but also fueling for performance. Now, that's what I try and remember as well, is that the food that I'm eating will help my performance in the long run. Now, most people, if you work in an office, you'll understand that you'll get the 3 o'clock slump. So you'll head for the biscuit tin or whatever goodies are being passed around in the office. Will say yes to because you get that 3 o'clock slump. But come 6 o'clock, when you've got to go out for your run, you're probably feeling really lethargic and just not feeling great. And that can sometimes have an impact on your performance. So I think eating as nutritious food as possible is the best way to do it. Another thing that I would really recommend is also to keep a food diary, especially if you're new to nutrition and training. You can start to see patterns with your food, and it also makes you a bit more mindful about what you're eating. I find that a lot of clients of mine will not realize how much they may be snacking, and this is where we can really, really hinder our performance and our sort of goals if we do have weight loss, because you can in theory be eating a very healthy breakfast, lunch and dinner, but if you start to add a lot of snacks in there in between and you're not mindful about them, especially that extra biscuit that someone's offered to you in the office, or if you start picking at your child's dinner when you're making it, or if you're picking at your dinner as you're cooking it, this is when all of the additional food and extra calories can add up. So I think that's the biggest thing for me, is trying to keep a food diary, because as well you can assess your mood and how your training is around it and see what works best for you, especially if you're fueling up on, say, a Saturday night for a long run on a Sunday. You can see what patterns are occurring, and as well just being a bit more mindful about the food and the food that you're eating. So just it's keeping food as fresh as possible, ditching junk as and when you can, and just enjoying the process of it as well. So Laura Butterworth asked, are rehydration powders good to use post-run? Now, down to the individual really. I sometimes find that just water is enough for me, but if you do find that you're becoming quite dehydrated, then you can use a rehydration powder post-run, just if you are quite bad at, say, drinking water throughout the day, because some people sort of say forget to drink a lot of water. So rehydration powder might be a bit better to use than nothing at all, especially if you're bad at your water intake is quite low. So give it a try, see if you notice a difference. Again, this is where the food diary can come into it. If you find that you've taken the rehydration powder and you feel better throughout the day, then it's definitely worth taking. Let me just see if I've got any other questions that came through earlier. So yeah, I think I've covered everything, that the questions that have been asked earlier in terms of pre, during and post. Good question, Julie. What's your view on alcohol while marathon training? So I have two big social groups of friends now. Both of them are quite big drinkers, especially at the weekend. So I trained for my first marathon in 2014, and for some reason on New Year's Eve in 2013, I swore to myself that I would not drink all the way in the lead up to my first London marathon, and I actually stuck to it. I think because one of the big things as well, if you are sort of trying out a new nutrition system, or if you're training for a race, make yourself accountable. Tell as many people as possible what you're doing, because then they'll know what journey you're on and they will ask you about it, and it will keep you on track. Now, it might be a bad thing at the time, but keep yourself accountable. So I told as many people as possible that I was giving up alcohol on the lead up to the London Marathon. So everyone would ask me all the time, oh, we've got this big event coming up this weekend, are you going to drink? So I actually didn't drink alcohol for the whole, I think from all the way from January until April. So almost 4 months without alcohol. And it was tough, I must admit, especially if there was friends' parties to go to or there were social occasions. But I didn't feel like I missed out, because, you know, on a Saturday night, it's a big evening for people. But if you're getting up and going out on Sunday mornings and going for your long runs, I would not recommend drinking alcohol. Some people can do it, but I personally don't feel that I can. So I find that I'm quite extreme on this. I find that alcohol does sort of hinder my marathon training. So I try to stay away from alcohol as much as possible whilst marathon training. I think this year round as well, I didn't drink as much alcohol, and I definitely in sort of the last few weeks leading up to the marathon, I didn't drink at all. I just find that I feel a lot better without drinking. It keeps me on track. You know, the night after a few drinks, you're more inclined to eat unhealthier foods. And then the day after, you feel a bit more lethargic, and it just sort of, the Saturday night rolls all the way into Monday morning. So I wouldn't say give up alcohol, but if you are doing a longer run, I would try and stay away from alcohol as much as possible. I found that it really helped me train better. And then on the day itself, I felt good. And also then the first drink after the run tasted so good. So do I take any supplements? Now, supplements, I think that's a very good question, because the biggest thing here is to remember that supplements are supplementary to your diet. So sometimes I feel that some supplement companies are just trying to rip people off and take money where they can, because they are supplements, and you should be able to get a lot of the vitamins and minerals that you need and all of the goodness from your diet. Now, I don't take too many supplements. I have done in the past, and I have tried different things, and I have sort of noticed that sometimes without taking supplements, I don't notice much of a difference. I do like taking daily vitamin tablets, just because they're quite cheap to buy and you can't get too many vitamins and minerals within your diet. I do also like having a vitamin C tablet. Again, they can be very cheap, and they're good in the winter months. That's definitely something to remember for marathon training, is that it's going to be cold and your immune system is going to be a lot lower. So making sure that you get in extra vitamins, and especially vitamin C, it's really good to keep your body nice and healthy throughout the next few months. So daily vitamins, I take vitamin C tablets. I have mentioned before that I like taking protein powder, so I have that post run. And also it is good, I add it sometimes, maybe not a full scoop, but say half a scoop to my porridge, which gives it a bit of flavour. And apart from that, I don't really take any other supplements, as I like to have quite a varied and balanced diet to find that that's sort of enough for me. I've got a whole cupboard full of different things which I've either bought, purchased in the past, or sort of been given at different various fitness shows. But I think that unless you've got a sort of vitamin or mineral deficiency, you shouldn't really need to rely on too many supplements as long as you've got a good diet alongside that. So I hope that sort of answered the question, Julie. Anything else from anyone? Has anyone got any questions about fueling? You know, the next few months, this is what the whole process is about, really, is trial and error. That's the biggest thing. You know, you've got to be able to go out and do your research, buy different products, go and use them on your runs, and just test it out, because each individual is different. And remember, I can give as much information to you as possible, you can speak to as many people, but remember, this is your own personal journey from now on until the spring, if you've booked in for a half or a full marathon. So yeah, remember who you're doing it for. You're doing it for yourself, and if you've got any own personal goals. So, you know, don't compare yourself to others, listen to other people, but definitely try and find what works best for you. So another good question, favorite snacks for when hunger hits. Oh, I rely quite a lot on fruit, actually. I really like fruit. I've got quite a sweet tooth, so I find that fruit works really well for me. Now, a lot of people have also said things like nuts, but nuts you've actually got to be quite careful with, because, you know, a portion size of nuts should actually be just a small serving within your hand. But who actually does that? You know, you eat a lot more. But people think that nuts is a really good snack, but you've got to be careful, especially if you are looking at your sort of weight loss as well. I like to have things like yogurt, Greek yogurt. So I have small pots of yogurt. But yeah, fruit is the main thing that I like to snack on. And also sort of things, there are other products out there like protein bars. Again, I get sent a few different things like that, so I'll try different things. But sometimes I find that I don't always have time to snack. I'm quite busy. So, you know, don't be scared. You know, there's a lot of people that say that you've got to have 3 meals and 2 snacks a day. If you find that you can actually just rely on 3 big meals, do so. It's all about your calorie intake versus your energy expenditure out. So if you're taking in more calories than you're expending, then you're going to put on weight. But if you are expending more energy than you're putting into your body, that's when you lose weight. So don't necessarily feel like you need to snack if you're not hungry. But yes, I normally reach for something like fruit. Laura's asked, is there any particular foods that can help with muscle repair? I've got DOMS today. I'm wondering, is diet mixed with stretching will help? So DOMS is natural, especially when you start doing the longer runs and more intense sort of speed, hill or tempo type sessions. So stretching is a very important thing to be doing. Always stretch after your run, but if you can't stretch straight after because of, say, time restrictions, then there's no harm in stretching whenever you can. Foam rolling as well is really good. I try and do that sort of every other day, get the foam roller out. Another good thing is incorporating yoga into your routine. But the best thing to do with muscle repair is protein. So like I said before, protein powder, things like meat, beans, pulses, eggs have also got very good high protein content, cheese, cottage cheese, yogurts. So just making sure, as I said before as well, a food diary is really, really good to be able to understand if you feel like you're getting enough protein into your diet. So definitely stretching, foam rolling, yoga, and a good diet should help with the muscle repair. It's quite natural though as well. If you do find that you have DOMS, it does show that your body, it's not always good to experience DOMS. but it's a natural part of training, unfortunately. Anyone else got any last questions? Realise it's getting quite late now. Hope everyone has been able to put I'm a Celebrity on record. Thanks, Julie. Glad you've enjoyed it. We'll definitely be able to do another one of these sessions soon if anyone's got any more questions. I hope that I've been able to sort of give people some information to take away and apply to training, because that's the main thing, is really just to try over the next few weeks and few months what you can incorporate. And it is trial and error. It's not going to be perfect straight away. You've got to find the best strategy for you. Thanks, Linda. Thanks, Vicky. Thanks, Nicola. I'm glad that you've all found it really useful. Do drop me a message at any time if you've got any other questions. Because I must admit, I'm still experimenting myself. I'm training for my next marathon come January, and I'd like to try myself with more sort of food-based products. So I'm going to try and document my own personal journey as well, to see what I can use and what other products there are on the market, or as well maybe just making some stuff of my own. It's all about experimenting, and that's what makes the training process quite fun. Remember, it's quite a big thing training for a marathon, but you've got to enjoy the process at the same time. So yeah, hopefully I'll have some more information over the next sort of few weeks and months to share with everyone about fueling and the different options there are out on the market. But if you would like to follow me, I am on Facebook, Instagram and Twitter, all as CleanCoachKatie, and I do often post different recipes and things online. So I do like to experiment myself with different foods and different meals. So feel free to follow me and send me any questions at any point, as I do share quite a few different tips and tricks on my different social media platforms. So do ever get in touch if you do want to have any questions. I have seen as well that Julie has posted about the National Running Show in January, and I'll be there on the Saturday. So do come down and meet with as many people as possible, because I find that these types of events are really motivating and inspiring. And even if you don't sort of buy anything or take much away from the day, you'll just find that it's a motivating environment to be in. So I definitely recommend going to one of the days. Oh, thanks, Kate. I'm glad that you came to the last workshop, the foam rolling session. Yes. So I'm based in Milton Keynes and hosting some foam rolling workshops. And actually, the first session has completely sold out, and the second session is almost fully booked as well, Kate. So look forward to seeing you there as well. Oh, sorry to hear that, Linda. You couldn't get any sound. But yeah, let me know what you think afterwards. But yes, thank you, everyone. Thanks for tuning in. I hope you've enjoyed it. I'm going to sign out now and get myself off to bed. Early morning, upcoming, working with clients. So thanks again, everyone. And hopefully look forward to seeing you all. See you all soon. But so yeah, big thanks to Julie for inviting me along today. I've really enjoyed it, and I hope you will have too. So thanks once again. And take care, everyone. Good evening. Happy Sunday.